Hello, YouTube. We are back with another podcast with EthanRichterian. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm EthanRichterian, and I've been a member of the Richter family since early 20.
Ethan is also a member of the government and lots of other things, but for this podcast, I've invited one of the longest-serving members of my collective, and since the last podcast we invented a former anti-Richter, I thought it'd be a bit more fair if we invited a Richter rather to this. And so, with that being said, we're going to dive right into this. I've been waiting to do this for quite a while, and now I have the opportunity to do so. Um, so with that being said, so Ethan, what did you do before you joined the Richters?
Well, I joined Roblox in about 2015, and I just messed around, played games, and late 2016, I sort of got into groups. So I first joined a Galactic Republic group where Star Wars and all that,
Right.
and eventually, I saw an ad. I think it was for the Richter Empire. So I joined that, and I'd sort of seen your videos online as well. I looked it up. I saw that there was, marches, activity, there was war. So I joined it. I gave it a try. I saw you a couple times in game, but I never really made it far there.
Yeah.
Eventually, Richter Empire was content deleted, and I joined up, and that was where I met you for the first time. And I remember thinking, why you were an LR in Arcadia when you were previously a man of great stature. So I asked what you were doing there, and you explained how the Richter Empire was content deleted. So you know
Yeah.
I just followed you then ever since.
Yeah, it was quite I feel like it was quite the group. For its time, it was ahead of people development wise, but in 2020, I actually kind of praised the group. I was going to do it after I was exiled from Olomonic Realm. We planned to do Imperial Arcadia remake with Dietrich Oakwood approving us of remaking it the Richter Dyke or the Oakwood dynasty and all that, but I realized that 3 years ago is a big difference because that aesthetic, as much as it was ahead of its time for 2017, is more like 2019 quality. And so, if we were to do it, it would be like Italy in the sense of its aesthetic. The aesthetic was really good, but it's just a tad old. Saying that Italy is back in the 2019, you know, after 2018, a few months after 2018, Italy. I praise the aesthetic, but I realized, like after I did Italy, eventually groups like TWP and Zofield's DDR, although DDR was also not ahead of the aesthetic either. They were kind of behind technology-wise, and Lewis's GTR were made, and they had really good aesthetics. And I realized that my aesthetic, even though it was really good, it was just behind in terms of time and stuff. So when I saw Imperial Arcadia, I was really impressed, and I joined up right away. And I joined the regime, rose up the power in the regime, individually became the chairman. As a chairman, I expended its power times 10. The Legion got jealous and they exiled me. So it was a short-lived one-week group thing, which could have went really well had I not been exiled. But everything happens for a reason. I feel like if I had been exiled from all these groups in the past, I wouldn't be where I am today. So it was definitely quite the group. And after you became a follower, it was you were one of the first real followers, because everyone else that was loyal to me before you didn't last very long. Foxy KJ retired in Scotland. Nicholas Vershevsky betrayed me in Scotland. Who else was there? There's a couple other guys that were also around, like Vaughn, or I'm not going to mention people that are still with us, but there were more people that betrayed us down the road. And yeah, you've still remained as one of the most loyal men that have been around. You and Vianney. But Vianney is a bit more inactive. He hasn't seen as much as you have, but it really I kind of realized that for TRI that you were kind of the elder. You're kind of the one guy to if we were ever to fall apart, you'd be the one guy left standing. And I've always wondered, how did Ethan manage this? Even back in Scotland, I said that it would be you, JJ Myers, and Puppy Dog that would be the last standing loyalists of my collective. And Puppy is still around, but Puppy hasn't joined a group since TRI. And JJ Myers is still around, but he hasn't talked to me since like Oceana. You know, we have loyalists
Yeah.
around, but they're not like you've joined every group. You're active in every group. You know you've always been around since day one. And so I've always wondered, how do I recreate this? And nowadays, I have people that have been around for longer than a year. I feel like, okay, these guys might be our actual diehards. We have Dylan, we have Realms or Dragonov, we have Vianney, of course, and all the other guys, right? We have the other dozens and dozens of Richters. But, Vonwer was loyal for about 2.5 years before he made his first boo boo. And then, the other guy, like I said, people that just are around and then they just kind of drift off into space out of nowhere. And so I've always worried that one member of the inner circle or one of the other diehards will do the same thing as time goes on. But I haven't had any of my main fanatics do that since, I guess, Apollo. Apollo was the last Richter to kind of like drift away into retirement. Everyone else has been around. And so I think I already have. Like, I asked this question years ago. I asked this question back in or not TRI, but rather like between Korea and TRI. I kind of asked myself, like, how do I maintain an Ethan? And I think that I've already done it. But then again, I still wonder, like, what has made you so loyal? Like, I myself was sold a gut bomber for a good year, or however long it was, and to Joe, aka to my cousin Willem too, for like 2 years. But you know, you're the kind of guy that even if I did quit, you would still maintain every aspect about me. With Gut Bomber, after Gut Bomber quit, I'd maintain everything. When Gut Bomber came back, I didn't rejoin him because I was exiled, my own collective going. The loyalty I gave him, you know, wasn't as great as my own people give me, but nevertheless, it's still like not even something I could do. And so I've just, like I said, just always wondered how you could have maintained that. Because I always, as honorable as loyal as I tried to be, it's still remarkable. It's really remarkable how you do it. And
Yeah.
I guess it's
I
fair to
guess.
say that Gutbummer and Joe didn't exile me. It's like I was loyal, and despite my loyalty, they kind of let me drift off. For you, it's like I've never let anyone push you around. If anyone attacks you, they attack me. It's like I've always been there. So I feel like, it's unfair for me to say that I'm not as loyal, but you get the point. So.
Well, I've always felt that, if someone's loyal to you, you'll, you know, take care of them, stick up for them.
Mhm.
I've never had a reason to betray.
Right.
So,
That's a fair
I've
point.
never had any reason to leave.
I see. But you're kind of the main pillar of the collective. It's like that's the main thing though too, is the fact is that people that are really loyal could pull a big power move because there are people that are diehards or like the pillars of the cause. And if we lose those pillars, you know, and this is kind of hypothetical by the way, you, Vianney, and Realms, and um is the other guy. And there's like one more guy from like 2017 that's still around. You guys are the four pillars, and it's like you lose two of those pillars, and you get on a slippery slope. So that's the thing about it too, is it's also worrying because you guys are the reason why everyone's confidence is so high. It's because we've had these long-serving loyalists, and so the thing is if we lose them, whether it be like an IRL death or whether anything, it'd be a huge blow not just to the groups, but the cause and the beliefs that surround them too. And so, I've never worried or questioned your loyalty, which is remarkable because I always have gotten mad at one person. I only got mad at you once. It was in Scotland because you were inactive, but you improved,
Well,
and
yeah,
so, you know,
there's been a couple of times where I almost drifted into retirement, but I brought myself back.
mhm. Yeah. I feel like if you ever did retire, it would lower a lot of confidence, and so I've always been thankful, but you know. it was always you. I always put you and Lolzio in one group of fanatics, but Lolzio, it's just I knew Lolzio wasn't gonna stick around forever. It's just his personality. You know, he's too individualistic. He wants his ideas out there, and he's like in his own way an authoritarian. Because if he doesn't get his way, he's gonna have a fit. You know, and he criticizes me for having these authoritarian views or whatever. But in a way, he's so individualistic that anyone that even attacks him for his ideas, he'll get mad about it. He attacked me for it too. Um, but on to the next question. So, with that being said, so when you saw the Richters, what was your initial opinion?
Well, like I said, I watched a lot of videos of the marches from the Richter Empire. I sort of looked a bit into your history. You know, you were exiled. You had that story on your bio of your history in the World War II community.
Yeah.
And I just sort of, I couldn't really believe that people would be loyal for so long.
Hmm.
And it was sort of insane to me that on Roblox, just, you know, an online game, you had a dedicated following of people who would join every group you made, you know,
Hmm.
proclaim their loyalty. And I couldn't really believe it until I became one of them. So,
Interesting. Well, loyalty at the time was more or less defined by like national loyalty, but over time it drifted by like during Imperial Arcadia's when I started studying different variants of ideologies because I realized like by time fall hit, it was like September. I kind of dropped the whole ideal of the whole national loyalty and drifted more off to like a more personal loyalty. Not for selfishness, and I've said it 100 times, but it's gonna be one guy coming around questioning me on this. So, more or less, it was always for the better interest of the collective in itself. If everyone is combined and unified by one entity, then they can collectively, as a whole, move somewhere. And because on this game, the reason why nationalism doesn't work is because nationalities on this game are temporary. And if that nation collapses and it's deleted by roadblocks, you can't really remake that exact nation. In real life, it works because in real life, you are born with that nationality. But in this game, it's something you can choose and change. It's more fluid. And because it is a more fluid system, it does not work. So that is why I abandoned it, and I also became what I did in real life. I guess also I did in game, I suppose, and that continued on until around Scotland. After Scotland, I kind of realized that like doesn't matter what I am in game or in real life, you know, I can do whatever, and that's why I joined KGB because in real life I have Scottish heritage and I believe in Scottish independence, but I still joined KGB because as it is in the colonial group, by the way, for those watching. But because why not? It's more like a why not. It looks good, looks cool, and so I became less politically motivated by the groups I do on this platform afterwards. It became less edgy per se. So yeah, I guess you could say that Brandon a lot of long-string loyalists. You couldn't believe it, but back then, and like a year loyalist was like the biggest achievement ever. It's like this guy's been with me the past year, and then I met Lewis, and then I'm like, oh god, this guy's like 5 years ahead of me, you know. And the funny thing is Lewis wanted fanatics. Lewis had loyalists, he had followers, but they followed him because of his ideologies. Or sorry, I pronounced that terribly. Ideology. Sorry, what the? My English is so bad right now. I can't say ideologies. I can't. It's like I
ideology.
just forgot. Yeah, ideologically. So I see. I can't say it. It's like my English just screwed up.
Ideological.
I swear to God, I could say it before and I can't say it now. Ideal ideological beliefs. I'm just gonna say ideological beliefs. The best I can say it. So anyway, so Lewis wanted fanatics, but he had loyalists, and they were all loyal for a reason because of ideological beliefs. And so Lewis couldn't get that for quite the longest time. And I remember one of his old members telling me that like after Austro-Prussia, he was finally achieving it. And I had fanatics, I had loyalists. I just, I guess you could say, I just wasn't satisfied by it. The thing is about back then, I wasn't as molded into who I am today because I was so lenient. It back then I was emotionally invested into my loyalists. So for me to exile someone for treason, it was hard, and I gave a lot of chances. Like Avalon, for instance, Avalon did so many things. He did like dozens of bad acts, and I'm like, you know what? I don't really care because he was fighting the group, and it was I mostly invested into everyone. And
Yeah,
after
I,
during
I
TRI, I
remember
kind
I
of learned.
petitioned you. I
Go ahead.
petitioned you so many times to remove Avalon because he even started his own group. I think he had a Kingdom of Hungary. That was during
Yeah, yeah, I remember
going.
that. Well, people were so loyal that they were willing to, it's the one quote I said, I'd prefer a loyalist that would not shoot me in the head if ordered to, because they want what's best for me. And, you know, but that quote can be twisted because there's people that will say like, "Oh, I destroyed your Korea so that you wouldn't be able to own a failure." Like, I don't mean it like that. I mean it more in the sense that like, if I'm going to be charging into a battle, and I don't know there's a machine gun that's about to kill me, and someone, tackles me or whatever. Naturally, that would be disloyalty, the big bad move. But realistically, if they told me what happened, why they did it, it was more or less something loyal that they did. So, it's not necessarily blind loyalty because I make exceptions like those when it comes to my in-game loyalty system rather. So, it's stuff like that over time I kind of became more molded in, and through that I gained more diehard followers, you could perhaps say, because people could easily take advantage of me back then. And now it's like if a guy joins in my DMs and says, I'm gonna leave your group if you don't do this," I'm like, okay, that's one less member out of like 1,000. I could care less. What am I gonna care
Yeah,
if one guy leaves my group? Oh no, we lost the great the great Jackie Bobby. It's like I could care less if you leave my group, dude. Leave. I could care less if you're gonna, you know, some guy DM me the other day saying, "Give me Robux or I will leak more rumors about you," and I'm like, okay. There's already enough rumors out there about me, and they're all debunked, and my reputation has been more or less resolved. So I don't know. I've not done anything quite that bad. So anyway, that's how things kind of used to be, and I can kind of see what you're saying when it was inspiring to see this big following. But inspiration became jealousy rather quickly to a lot of people, because right after my collective got really, really big, people started forming similar things. Like the Furrigs had their own little mini cult, and the Atridians are like a Greek little Imperium thing, and they had their own loyalty system. Like everyone just did their own loyalty system. And the funny thing is, they all opposed me. They all said, "Oh, we hate the Richters. We hate them and their cults and this and that." And they themselves were cults. It was just the irony. It was just a bunch of jealousy. And people say, "No, it's not jealousy. Why would I be jealous of your crappy little empire?" It's like, it's honestly the truth. If you wouldn't be jealous, you would more or less. I mean, you know. So
well, yeah. Well, instead of jealousy, my reaction was just, I want to join that. I want
yeah,
to be a part of it, in some shape or form.
pretty much.
So
I think that's the case with a lot of people though too. Is like all of the guys that were inspired by what I did are already in the group. Like by recruiting new fanatics, I'm scraping the barrel of like people that come from ads. You know, that's why I think TRI was such a success. It was because like I was just out there. I was literally at the top alongside Lewis and Nerfer Dude and Zofio and Lavo. I was one of the top dogs. And since I was out there, a lot of people in the genre heard my name, they heard my beliefs and said, "This is the guy I want to follow." All these guys are loyal for years, and because of this, I want to join in and do the same thing. And all those guys are now here, you know. And so that's why it's so hard nowadays to find more fanatical followers in in-game sense. That is. So when it comes to that, it's just remarkable that people can maintain that loyalty. And I mean, I can too. I maintained it for 2 years. It's not that hard. You know, I got demoted, and I'm like, so what? I got demoted. I like this group. I'm going to stay here. It's like I could care less what rank I was. I liked the group, so I'm staying. You know,
yeah,
and so for me, it was just easy. But once you're exiled, it's like then I'm done because then you can't do anything about it. If you rejoin the group anyway, you'd probably be despised by most of the elite that got you exiled. So it's like there's no hope for you after you get exiled. That's a different story.
Unless you're a lieutenant who rejoins in an alt and
Yeah. The
makes it to
ultimate. Well, see, in my groups it's different because in my groups we give chances, but it really depends because we don't just give an instant chance. We don't give you a day. It's like this other guy betrayed me, and he came back like a week later and said, "Yeah, no thanks. Come back when you're ready." Because he wasn't ready. He came back and ate his bad dude. He's like, okay. He's like, "Okay, ready to come back now." Ranked me in the group, set me in the. He's like, giving like demands. And I'm like, whoa, buddy, you're not ready to come back. And I said, come back in another 2 weeks, and we can discuss you coming back. And so, we'll see if he got better or not. But it is remarkable. I think that even if there was ever like a mass betrayal, there would still be a few people. There would still be the few people that would still stick around because a lot of people play this game because of me. They say that apparently my groups are the most immersive, the only immersive groups on this platform, which I disagree with personally because there are groups that are immersive. It's just hard to find. Croneland has been having these raids with Anzac. They're talking about going on the African front, and there are immersive groups. I think Lewis has immersion as well in his groups, and Nerfer, and groups like those have immersion. It's just hard to find or hard to get into. So anyway, to the next question. Um, so
Yeah, Polish said his Discord is working as well. By the way. So continue.
We'll have to continue this without him because we're already halfway in. So
yeah,
I asked you about your initial thoughts, correct? Or did I ask you about?
Yeah.
Okay, so that being said, after you joined the Richters, what were your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to be honest. When I joined, I didn't really plan to stick around very long. I joined in the hope that you would, restart the German groups, but eventually, after following you for a couple of months, I sort of got a more of a gauge for your personality, and I, sort of took a liking to the way you ran things, the way you did things. I think it was in Prussia that I first became, sort of like your chief of staff or your secretary or whatever. I'd make documents and, I'd handle day-to-day things. And that was good for me.
Yeah.
But I think in 2019 we started the Richter Imperium, and that was where I first became prime minister. And I'd been in like row politics for quite a while, so I thought this is a perfect opportunity to sort of bring my expertise from row nations into the World War II community.
Yeah.
So I established the foreign ministry, the defense ministry, the legislative assembly, the courts. I hosted a lot of court cases over my time.
Yeah.
We had Hassan's trial. We had
oh man,
the trial of
that was with Oswald. The one with Oswald was my favorite.
Yeah,
That guy is just the whole. He was actually wasn't he like Hazan's lawyer or something? Oh yeah, he was Hazan's lawyer, and he went up there to defend Hazan. He said, "The great Hazan has sold over 1.5 million tons of mole intestines, and as a result of this, the antique economy has bolstered itself 10 times its original size." And I was dying laughing because he was just making up all this random stuff about moles and camels and fish and like how it bolstered the economy, and then at the end he topped it up as saying that the great cowardly Hazan, we should all take example from these great methods of economical policy or something like that. I only got one screenshot. I was dying laughing so hard I just couldn't even screenshot it. It was just so good.
yeah. That reminds me of when we had the trial for the marshal, and the marshal they had a witness, the prosecution, and he went up and he sort of slandered the marshal, and I asked, well, if not the marshal, if he gets removed, who would be a better candidate? And he says, me.
Oh yes,
Oswald. Just completely jeopardized the prosecution because they'd gotten someone who's clearly biased towards themselves, and they have a clear personal interest in
Well, that's
getting
the
the
funny
marshal.
thing. Everyone thought he was an opportunist trying to get in for some sort of rank, and he actually became the new Supreme Commander because I talked to him. And I'm like, you know what, I'll give you a chance. You're probably not that loyal, but I'll give you a chance. I gave him a chance, and he actually did really well. He was more loyal than I thought he was. I kind of underestimated him, but I did because you know how many people I've hired as a marshal? There was, let's start with Scotland. You see, there was, first it was you, then, well, there was someone else before you, but there was that one guy, then there was you, then there was Douglas, then there was, Radzig,
JJ,
you
puppy.
know, after Radzig, Lazio, and then we all go all the way down to TRI, and then it was Lazio again. Then it was Atticus. Then it was so on and so forth, all the way into Korea when we had Radzig again, and the Tier family. The only good marshals I've had was like Atticus before he betrayed. Well, actually, you know what? Atticus was a good guard commander. He wasn't a good marshal because as marshal, he killed the entire army. But Beans was a good marshal, and then Apollo was a good executive. He was kind of like a side marshal, he was like a kind of a marshal or of an executive to me. So he was kind of good, but he was more of a guy that took orders. He couldn't do things on his own. He wasn't very independent. I had to tell him how to do things. I said, the main activity he did things. And that's the thing about Apollo is that if I told him to do a training, he would do it. If I told him to keep the group active, he somehow did it. And that's why Apollo was so high ranked, but like he just faltered in faith. Like the guy, he might be listening to this. If you are, my apologies, but he's just so he gives off these depressing vibes. Like I feel like he's like depressed, like out of his mind depressed, And I feel bad, but there's not much I can do because, I don't want bad vibes. So in a way, it's like I want people that are going to maintain faith and say that we're going to last on. And he's just one of those guys that kind of, I don't think he's one of those guys that are extremely enthusiastic, want to bring faith to the table. And so that's the one flaw of his. And because we don't want to like associate with the lack of faith and fetism, it pushes him away from doing anything. But anyway, you get the point. The marshal, it's like it's hard to find a good marshal, and Oswald just qualified. He did everything correctly, and I'm like, wow, this guy actually can do his job correctly. And so I kept him after Scotland. I made him marshal in DDR, did his job, made him a high rank in the Alemannic Realm Vanguard or Militant Vanguard, whatever you want to call it. He did semi well, but Beans running the show, so he couldn't really do much in Japan. He was good with Shoshu for a bit, and then he got bored of Shoshu. He's just a good marshal. So I think he's going to be another one of our long-term followers, hopefully. You know, but more loyal. It's kind of like Beans, but more loyal. He's a lot more open to what I want to do. With Beans, if Beans didn't like something, he would obviously voice his opinion privately, but he was more aggressive with it. He didn't threaten me. It was just like he would mock it. He was very manipulative with his comedy. If there was something I disagreed with him, he would get me to agree by making me laugh very, very hard. And so,
Yeah.
and he did it with other people too. He did it with all the developers and everyone else. He tried to get them to be loyal to him by his comedy. And I can admit Oswald is kind of a good humor as well. That's not why I like him though. In terms of personality, it's just more or less, he's just a good commander. He does his job. If I ask for an active and disciplined army, he can give me an active and disciplined army. That's what I want from a staff member. If I tell them to do something and they do it, especially more than what I asked for, then they can stay. If they do it late, if they don't do it, if they do anything less than I asked for, then they're not a good staff member because I can't rely on them. We're under attack by all four fronts. I need you to rally the men. And that guy has less of an ability than my expectations. They're not good because they're not going to win a raid. I need people that can do things. This is a large collective, and we need to depend on someone that can bring this large collective to victory and glory. And Oswald will be the man to do it for years and years to come until I guess whenever the end is, I suppose. So you're going to be leading the government in Korea. So I want to know what your plans are for that. As a matter of fact, the entire podcast
Yes.
wants to know.
Well, it's going to be a lot like Beans' government, except there's going to be one key difference, and that's that I hope that the premier position will be interchangeable,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone will be able to register a party and run for the position of premier. And if they get enough votes, they can kick me out of office. So I'll go do something else, and they'll be premier.
Anyone
So
can register a party.
yeah,
What about the workers'
I
party?
mean, we'll have some regulations around it, but it'll be more or less free to register a party. So if people want, they can even register, the Communist Party, or they can register the,
All right.
neo-monarchist.
Right.
So
Right.
it's going to be a lot more free than Beans' system.
All right.
As you know, Beans wanted to hold on to power, and the premier position wasn't a position that was going to be interchangeable. And in
Yeah.
Korea, hopefully,
Well, we'll see how Korea reacts to this. That's a very interesting, very new idea that I've heard from a member of my government. So we'll see how this idea does with the Korean people, and how it'll be executed, of course, since this is a single party state, as I deem it to be. But um, I see. Any other plans that you have in mind?
well, obviously, I'll be making a court game, reforming the judiciary,
Yeah.
and I'll be seeing if we can establish a foreign relations department to make contact with other nations in the World War II community.
Hmm.
And I'll also be trying to integrate the position of Supreme Commander with the position of Minister of Defense, so we can have a representation of the army in the Parliament.
Yeah. That being said, Cab, if you're watching this, just DM the premier, this fellow right here, and he will be set up with a foreign affairs, because right now the entirety of Noriserm is just DMing me. They're just adding me to group chats. They're trying to get an alliance, and I'm like, oh no, I want to stay away from European politics. I want to stay away from all that. So they can bother you about it all they want. They can bother the Australian that's up at 4 a.m. EST, and I'm sure you'll be glad to talk to them. So that's interesting.
Indeed, yeah. I thought we could have a new, fresh take on the government system.
Hmm. Yeah, pretty much, because the governments in TRI in Scotland and all that were more or less vague, and they were kind of obsolete. They didn't really have a purpose. The one in Scotland we had lasted only a week in terms of the democratic constitutionalists, the nobles, the Council of Nobles lasted only a week. A week into the government, they all voted to have me have absolute power in Scotland, and so they disbanded the Council of Nobles, which is rather silly. I already had absolute power, it's just they wanted me to make all the decisions. And then in TRI, it was like a similar thing. We had this council thing where it was like we had the 5 low rank representatives, 5 MR representatives, 5 HR representatives, and 5 HC representatives. And they all made up of this, we'd all vote on things. And then they all said that I should have absolute power to make all decisions. They did the same exact thing. And then Beat established the government. The government was a lot more useful than it was in in Scotland and other groups. But then again, it still was a bit vague. It wasn't very, you know, laws weren't really being produced on the whim. They were only being produced if I asked them to be produced. I kind of had to manually direct it. But courts were still hosted nevertheless, and other events were hosted in regard to the government, so that was good. It's just, like I said, it became obsolete, kind of useless in a sense. Then again, TRI was a military group. It wasn't more of a nation group. It didn't have a actual nation to it. It was just the army. You had a few parties, and then you had the government, which had like 7 people. So.
Well, yeah, in most past groups, I sort of wanted to keep the role of the government as small as possible because I wanted to redirect people to the army and the party. They were the more or less centers of activity, and the government really only existed for court cases and every nation we did, I established a law book, and that was my magnum opus. That law book, it was like 5 pages of full of laws and
Yeah.
ways to address the supreme leader and all that stuff.
Hmm. I think that Beans gave us a really good template to use. I wouldn't call it copying because, you know, it's more we're using his template, but we're not using like the exact system. Because he had a more complicated system. Our system is less complex. It's a lot more free. Like you said, there's gonna be a lot more options to do. Unlike Japan, where I don't know why he would lead a Democratic Party for a shogun, make the Democratic Party the ruling party, and then make the Democratic Party this authoritarian single party state type of deal. It's just silliness, bunch of silliness, you know. So
Yeah.
that being said, government in Korea is going to be really exciting. A lot of hope for that. Um, so for everyone outside of this collective, what is it like being a Korea, or sorry, not a Korea? Wow, what's it like being a Korea? What's it like being a Richter?
Well, all I can really say is that it's not like any of the rumors or any of our enemies suggest it to be. It's Alec isn't a pedophile. He's not. There's no erotic roleplay. It's more or less like any other family out there on Roblox. It just exists to more or less have fun, make groups. Create roleplay. Um, it's not very good being. It's fun being the antagonist, but not when it gets too far as to have people doxing each other and
Yeah.
DDoS attack.
Kernman's Realm, they did like a massive dox, and they doxed like 8 of our guys.
Yeah,
They doxed 8 of our guys, leaked their IPs, and we made a rally the next day. And I asked them if they wanted to continue this, and I said they've been leaking IPs, they've been doxing accounts, they've been DDoxed, they've DDoxed me once. They've been doing all these things. So I'm like, do you, STR, want to continue? And everyone said yes. And that was after they did the total war speech. It's like, we shall declare total war and eventually total victory over the current man's realm. It was like, man, now that's loyalty. When people are getting doxxed and people are getting dedoxed and, there's exploiters going into the games and people still want to continue the war despite their real life fleet might be leaked because of this stupid conflict and they want to continue, that was remarkable. So I wasn't even really expecting that. I expected like maybe one or two people just to say no because, you know, most people would probably say no. But my people just stood there and said, "We will fight to the final victory," and it was just remarkable. It was inspiring. One of the best speeches I made, and it was because of that. It was just, and it was a genuine question. It wasn't even rhetorical. Well, it kind of was rhetorical, but the main intent was like it was an actual question to continue this conflict. But if everyone said they want to continue, it would have been rhetorical in that case. So
at the end of the day, we're not evil. We're just, you know, like everyone else, a bunch of kids. We're making groups, just having fun.
yeah,
At the end of the day.
yeah, that's what I would say as well. You know, we all have our quirks, we all have our differences, and each collective has a different way of doing things. Like Lava was more obsessed with 1984, and they're not as serious. And Zophiel is more concerned about communistic groups, and Lewis is more concerned about Germanic groups, and I'm more concerned about groups pertaining to authoritarianism. And we all have our little quirks and cues and ways of doing things, and people have kind of trying to use the quirks that we have as a weakness. We've all also had our edgy moments. Like Lavo used to be like had an obsession with exiling people. And Lewis had an obsession with the far right, and Zolfiel was kind of on the same boat as Lewis, but not like a diehard, you know, loyalist to his cause. It was like more, you know. So we all have had our edgy moments, and people are trying to use my moments as like a way of saying that we're bad. That's like saying that Lewis and his guys are bad because of they all used to be far right, and that's like saying you know, Lava and his guys are bad because they're obsessed with 1984, and Lava would axe people for no reason, or nerf her for deleting groups. You know, we just all have our way of doing things, and for me, it was just the um ironic roleplay. We had a lot of ironic, like in-game talk that was like death to all who oppose us, and people thought we were being dead serious. And that's like, no, we weren't.
Yeah.
We weren't being
Well,
dead. We don't want people to die over a Lego game. We were just trying to, you know, stick with in-game immersion. And so I think people coming to me saying that the Richters are stupid because of things like these from 1 to 2 years ago that was literally irony or immersion. It's all apparently my fault. And people still say that we still do the same exact stuff, which isn't exactly true.
it's not true at all.
Yeah. That being
And
said, go on.
we've been the scapegoat of the community for such a long time, just because we were the antagonist, the enemy,
Yeah.
and it was fun being the antagonist. But until, like I said, it gets too.
Yeah, definitely. I think the antagonist was fun, but it just got really too far. And so now that we're in a more balanced position, I think that we can now continue with what we intended to do. So, with that being said, what are your favorite and least favorite things about the World War II genre? Or community,
Well, I
rather?
like I like the sense of community, sense of belonging that we get. But there's quite a lot of good things about the genre. But like I said, the bad things are just things get too far sometimes, and some people are scapegoated. Fake facts are made up about people, fake evidence.
Yeah.
It's just it's got to stay in game. Immersion is fine. We we are very immersive in our groups, but it just can't get too far.
Yeah. That's the thing as well. That's why I've learned good optics. It's like now when we're immersive, it's like now we have to clarify using optics as a means of how we're just doing what we're doing. It's like there always was this one guy in game I'll do a speech and they're like, what do you mean you're gonna take over Europe? And it's like they take it way too out of context. It's like they're doing it. It's like they call us stupid, and it's like, why can they call us stupid when people are literally taking what we do out of context? They're taking irony seriously, and all this other stuff. It's like, how are we the ignorant ones here when we're just trying to play a game? And I should have made this clear a long time ago, but I wasn't able to, unfortunately. So, with that being
Well,
said,
yeah.
go on.
Hopefully, it's this can at least make it more clear to people that this is just role play. Just at the end of the day, it's just.
Hmm. And for those that I have harmed, because I don't really know, I don't think I've really done anything really bad. I haven't really scammed anyone. Um, so if there is anyone that I have in some way hurt, let's get on a new clean slate for at least once in your entire life, because things have really changed compared to last year. Like last year, I was a bit more aggressive with my immersion, and I did these group takeovers, and it was all immersion. I didn't actually annex Roblox groups like Nerf or Lewis. I just conquered their territories on a map and carried on with my day. So if there's anyone that I have hurt or anything else, at least get on a clean slate with me for once, because it's just it's gotten ridiculous. A lot of people that used to hate me they have now befriended me, and so this whole phase where it's I am the antagonist has ended. I can proudly say with full-hearted faith, it's ended, and it's time to rebuild friendships and rebuild this community. It almost died last fall, and now it's time to rebuild what was once nothing into now something. And so I only work with whoever the resolve differences and issues and get on a new clean slate. And Ethan, I have one more question, and it's more or less more for like the Richters in general, not really a community question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Why did you not use your mic for like the longest period? I'm just
Well,
curious.
I you know, even though I didn't really sound retarded, like I'm not a squeaker, I don't think, but
Right.
right, it's just, I prefer to keep my real life self and my online self as different as possible. Like I reinvented myself online. In real life, I'm sort of like, you know, just me, but online, I was sort of like a wise, almost mysterious person because I didn't really speak. I didn't really do anything. I just ran the government. I made laws, and that's why I don't think people outside of the Richters really know me because I was sort of stayed in the shadows.
Yeah.
But everyone has their different reasons for not using their mic, but that was just my reason.
Hmm. Well, I was just curious because I've been on Viney, and Viney has sent me pictures on Snapchat and other people I've spoken to, and it's like, wow, you know, it's been this many years and you finally open up. I think I heard Viney speak as well. I'm not sure if I did. Oh, I think I did. I think I heard him speak once before as well. So everyone's opening up now, and it's kind of cool. But just remember back in the day, it was just you were really quiet. You're kind of like an introvert. So you still are an introvert, but back then you were just the biggest introvert there was. So
Well, yeah, that's sort of the opposite of me in real life. In real life, I'm not really that much of an, I'll go hang out with friends and such. But online, I just, I sort of saw.
yeah, that's interesting. I have some friends that are extroverted in real life, and they want advice about girls, and they said that I told them that I'm better talking to girls online because I did a lot of like long distance, last year and stuff. So, and they said, well, that's our weakness. I love you guys are extroverts, and I'm like, in ambivert, I'm like kind of both in real life, right? Online, I'm a huge extrovert, but in real life, I'm like an ambivert. I'm usually quiet when I'm doing work, and when I'm socializing, I'm usually extroverted, but not as extroverted as I am online. And so, to them, it's like they're introverts online, but in real life, they're like super talkative, and it's interesting because I can notice it too. Like when me and him went on a voice call, he seemed kind of awkward. It was like weird because he's usually super confident, and it's like, why would he be awkward on a voice call? And he just said that he's just bad with like texting. It's just you know. So it's interesting how that works. You would think that it's the opposite. It's like if you're extroverted online and you're extroverted also, or no, if you're extroverted in real life, you're extroverted online. But if you're introverted in real life, you're gonna be maybe you might be extroverted online. Depends, but yeah. So it's actually the other way around. So, well, that being said, um, that's really all I have to say. So that all being said, that's all then, folks. So my English is just really bad. I don't even know why. I think it's because I've been so focused on work that I just can't even. My mind is just scrambled. I woke up and I was like, or I didn't really. I want to say woke up, but like hour of waking up, it was just I was just so busy. There were so many DMs, so much stuff going on that I was just like overworked in the sense that you know, my mind needed an actual break. So I think that's why I'm just scrambling all over the place with my words because I usually never scramble over my words on a podcast. If I talk really really fast, I will scramble on words, but that's just natural. Like everyone does that when they talk really fast, but I'm not even talking really fast. I'm talking kind of slow. So I don't know why I'm just scrambling around. So anyway, that's all. I just did it again. Actually, you know why? It's because the freaking English on the script is screwed up. Um, well, that's all, folks. So thanks for watching and have a great night. And hopefully, launch goes really well on Friday. But I might release another video tomorrow. But have a nice night. Farewell.